Our class notes on how to craft a resume in the physical activity field. And this is for our physical education, teacher education, and sport performance majors here at Eastern Michigan University, but definitely can be extended to other people, situations in these related fields. So, quick review, what a resume is. It's a one-stop shop. Think of it as a really quick way for a potential employer to see what you have to offer. And just so you know, a resume is still considered a traditional piece of professional documentation of who you are. We know that there's many other newer, up-to-date ways that lots of other employers are looking at as well as resumes, but it's good to have a really solid resume just as much as we may want to have a solid website or social media profile. So this resume, specific things we'd probably want to include and emphasize our potential certifications that we currently have, our education, our work involvement that we have, and I'll explain what this is in a little bit. If applicable, any awards or honors that would actually help us in this type of career position, and then 3 to 4 recent references as well. So there's a few different types of resumes. There's a chronological resume. So this is actually reverse chronological. So that means everything that's listed within a specific space on the resume is listed from most current first to least current last. So the closest thing to happening right now is first, the furthest thing to happening or from the past is later in the area. These are pretty easy to write because we just think back to what we did and our experiences and the dates that we were at a certain position or in a situation, and it's one of the more common types of resumes. Another type of resume is called functional. This presents themed categories. So things are divided into sections, and these categories are more related to our personal strengths or qualities that we have or even skills that we have. This type of resume draws attention to what we can do and what we're capable of versus how long we did something for or what the actual job it was or when it was. And so this is a really good option to use these themes if you have a really scattered work history or if your work experience or professional history is really brief, which typically does involve a lot of us in this college setting or young adulthood. And then the third type, and this is what I recommend, is a combination. So this uses both themes and sections of different types of work. It focuses on having some sections that just talk about strengths and capabilities, but it is presented in this reverse chronological order so that when we do have education or work history, it is very clearly identified and easy for a potential employer to find what we've done. A few things to include that we want to make sure to include. So first impressions make a big deal. And so we want to have a heading on the top of our resume page. So if we are using a front and a back of a piece of paper, this heading would be on both parts of it potentially. If we have a separate page for references, it's good to have a reference. I'll mention this at the end, but it's good to have a reference page that is also separate because sometimes we need to upload that differently or separately than the resume itself. Having some sort of heading that's unique to you that represents who you are. This is also known as letterhead. So if you think of letters that you've seen with a logo or branding name on it, this is exactly what it is. At minimum, this should include your full name. It's okay to put your middle initial, your physical address, a phone number that you can actually be reached at, and then a professional email. And other things could be included in the heading, so as long as it looks clean and meets the needs of the resume, sometimes people will include a graphic or a quote, or they'll have different elements related to their name. For example, like a monogram of their initial may be included as well. Education. So a few things to keep in mind. And we'll talk more later about where on the resume to put our education. Some situations we want to put it right away first. Others it's not necessarily to go first. But here's some do's. Include the actual degree title. So if you are in one of these programs, you are getting a Bachelor of Science. That's your actual degree title. You don't have to include your major or your minor on the resume. You can if you think it will help you or if you think it's relevant to the position you're applying for, but it's not necessary. That's typically something that will come up or may come up in an interview. And so it's not always necessary to have it there. GPA is the same thing. If you think it will help you, my recommendation is really not to include the GPA unless it's at honors level or higher, which is typically a 3.3 and above. If you think it will help you in that situation, or say this is a resume that has to be included in a graduate school application or a scholarship application, and you also want to emphasize that good GPA, then include it in there. If you do not yet have your bachelor's degree, but you went to a community college and did achieve the full associate's degree, it's okay to include it. Or if you have any sort of formal educational training that's in a specific skill or trade area, include that on there. It's okay to put your current degree, so here at EMU, you're in progress, but you just say that it is in progress. You don't make it seem like you finished it, and so that's why you put your expected graduation date. And then here's a quick tip. If you don't have much work experience in the field, it's okay under education to list, could be in bulleted form, a few examples of unique coursework. And here you're not going to list PhD 204, you're not going to list the number or the acronym for our department. You're going to put the full name of the class and listing 1 to 2 specific projects or applied assignments that you did in that class that you think will help contribute to the impression of your capabilities. In the university, you're going to also include the city and the state of it. So even though it says Eastern Michigan University, you actually are going to include Ypsilanti, Michigan as well. If you don't. If you are in progress, don't leave out the expectation graduation year. If you did achieve a degree, make sure you put the year that you got it. Don't forget to identify the degree earned. So it's kind of the do and the don't. Actually put Bachelor of Science. Don't include common coursework. So in our programs, biomechanics, exercise physiology, motor development, methods of physical training classes, these are all common classes that are expected for someone that's in a major like these, if it's a methods of teaching class, for example. And so don't include those in your list of unique coursework. Pick something that's a little bit different, something that could include some buzzwords that are current or popular right now. You can definitely ask any of us faculty for what we think might be a course to identify and some specific assignments or projects that you would want to list. Don't include high school. You are already in college, so it's assumed that you graduated high school. And don't include your GPA if you don't think it will help you or if it's really not relevant. A few things with certifications. I'm going to do the don'ts first. If it's not current, it shouldn't be on there. Don't only just list the abbreviation. So say you got your National Strength and Conditioning Certified Strength and Conditioning Coach certification. Don't put NSCA, CSCS only. It's okay to put the abbreviation in parentheses, but you do need to fully write out the organization and the name of the certification itself, because not everybody looking at this resume is going to know what the abbreviations are, especially if they're being filtered first through an HR department. It's important to not identify particular levels. So some certifications may have a level 1 or level 2, different distinctions. You need to identify those if it has those. And then you should have at least one certification in this area for you to include it as a section on the resume. So the do's are pretty much the right way to do it. So include certifying body, who certified you. So say it's first aid CPR. For many of you, you're going to go through the American Red Cross. You're actually going to list the American Red Cross. You're going to list first aid. CPR is a commonly held abbreviation, so that one is maybe my one exception of the abbreviation you could list. If there's any specifics like an age level or type of group that you're certified to work with. So say you have a yoga certification for older adults, you're going to identify that's one of the subsections or sub-certifications you have. And like I mentioned before, it's okay to put the abbreviated name in parentheses after you write it out. Work experience. So here's a few things. Include the work experience that's related to the job that you want. So you don't have to include every single job you've ever had in your entire life, especially if it's pre-college and especially if it's not relevant to this field or if it doesn't have a good amount of transferable traits or strengths or requirements. So what you need to include, if you have a job or have work experience, that makes sense. Your title at it, the city and state, the years that you were there. So you don't have to put the specific actual days of employment, but say it was 2016 through 2018, you're going to put that range of the years. And then here's what's important, 2 to 3 bullets, at least 2, of action verb starter statements of what you did. So this could be your roles or responsibilities, if there were any successes, anything that you did to propel that position or that company forward. Don'ts. Don't include non-physical activity related work. The only situation where you would is if you're short on physical activity related work, or if the role that you did, say you were a manager at a retail store and you had to manage budget, you had to manage personnel, hiring, firing, say you had to manage a large amount of money. Those are pretty transferable strengths that show a lot of responsibility and having to manage people and things. So those are transferable traits to most jobs. The other thing is, don't include work that's not relevant to the job, again, unless it's all you have. Some other things to keep in mind. So other experiences. This is an optional section, and this is something I recommend if you have some good work experience you want to include, but it's not related, but it has some transferable skills. This is where I would say put 2 of those jobs at most could go into. Or if you have something else that's unique. So say you've done a lot of coaching, or say it's a teaching resume, but you also are a personal trainer. You would want to have a separate section for that. And if you've had at least 2 different coaching positions that you want to mention, coaching can get its own section, its own category. So basically you get to come up with what you want to title this section, as long as you make sure that what's in it makes sense to be grouped in that same space. And so a typical rule of thumb is it can be a new section if you have 2 or more items to list work experience or whatever in that section. Professional involvement. This is something that, depending on the position, could absolutely be valued. And so if you are a member of an organization, basically, so it could be something related to our profession. So say you're a student member of Shape America, that's our National PE Association, or say you joined the National Strength and Conditioning Association as a student member because you attended a conference. You're going to list the name of the organization, spell it out. You're going to put where the organization is located, especially if it's something local. So say you're a member of like the local Lions Club or local Optimist Club. You're going to include, or fraternity, sorority, you're going to put the years that you were a part of it. And then here's where it's important. You need to put a few action verb bullets. I always say you need at least 2 things to make a bulleted list about your role and what you actually did. So let's just say you're in an organization, you just paid money in your membership dues, but you really didn't do anything. You probably shouldn't include it, or should not include it, because if you're not prepared to talk about roles and action that you did, think about verbs again. That's really not going to say much to your involvement in it, especially if you're asked about that in an interview. Some other possible sections, if these could apply to you, or if you have room to fill, or if you think it's relevant. So if you have military service, or if you're in the armed forces, if you have extensive volunteerism or community service, or even if you have a bunch of one-time volunteer stints, you can put a separate category for those. Any awards or honors, the only time you should list high school is if it was a major event. Say you're a valedictorian, say you were a state champion, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I would not include it. If you receive university scholarships, major of the year. Technical proficiencies could be another category, and so this is office productivity software, social media experience, photography, but you better be good at it if you're going to include it, and be willing to bring up a work sample. And also only include, again, a separate category if you have at least 2 items in that section. References, really quickly, you should have 3 to 4. Don't say they're available on request. They should match your work experience, and you should have a variety of types, someone who can actually recently speak to your strengths, and include all ways to contact them: name, title, location, address, phone, and email.